To Zahir and Zelda. When I was a child, I saw God. I saw angels. I watched the mysteries of the higher and lower worlds. I thought all men saw the same. At last, I realized that they did not see. Shams of Tabriz, The 40 Rules of Love. Prologue. Between your fingers, you hold a stone and throw it into flowing water. The effect might not be easy to see. There will be a small ripple where the stone breaks the surface, and then a splash muffled by the rush of the surrounding river. That's all. Throw a stone into a lake. The effect will not only be visible but also far more lasting. The stone will disrupt the still waters. A circle will form where the stone hit the water, and in a flash the circle will multiply into another, then another. Before long, the ripples caused by one plop will expand until they can be felt everywhere along the mirrored surface of the water. Only when the circles reach the shore will they stop and die out. If a stone hits a river, the river will treat it as yet another commotion in its already tumultuous course, nothing unusual, nothing unmanageable. If a stone hits a lake, however, the lake will never be the same again. For 40 years, Ella Rubinstein's life had consisted of still waters, a predictable sequence of habits, needs, and preferences. Though it was monotonous and ordinary in many ways, she had not found it tiresome. During the last 20 years, every wish she had, every person she befriended, and every decision she made was filtered through her marriage. Her husband, David, was a successful dentist who worked hard and made a lot of money. She had always known that they did not connect on any deep level, but connecting emotionally need not to be priority on a married couple's list. She thought specially for a man and a woman who had been married for so long, they were more important things than passion and love in a marriage, such as understanding, affection, compassion, and the most godlike act a person could perform, forgiveness. Love was secondary to any of these, unless, that is, one lived in novels or romantic movies where the protagonists were always larger than life and their love nothing short of legend. Ella's children topped her list of priorities. They had a beautiful daughter in college, Janet, and teenage twins, Orly and Evie. Also, they had a 12-year-old golden retriever spirit who had been Ella's working buddy in the mornings and her cheeriest companion ever since walking buddy in the mornings. He had been a puppy. Now he was old, overweight, completely deaf, and almost blind. Spirit's time was coming, but Ella preferred to think he would go on forever. Then again, that was how she was. She never confronted the death of anything, be it a habit, a phase, or a marriage, even when the end stood right in front of her, plain and inevitable. The Rubinsteins lived in Northampton, Massachusetts, in a large Victorian house that needed some renovation but still was splendid, with 5 bedrooms, 3 baths, shiny hardwood floors, a 3-car garage, French doors, and best of all, an outdoor jacuzzi. They had life insurance, car insurance, retirement plans, college saving plans, joint bank accounts, and in addition to the house they lived in, two enviable apartments, one in Boston and the other in Rhode Island. She and David had worked hard for all this, a big busy house with children, elegant furniture, and the wafting scent of homemade pies might seem a cliche to some people, but to them it was the picture of an ideal life. They had built their marriage around this shared vision and had attained most, if not all, of their dreams. On their last Valentine's Day, her husband had given her a heart-shaped diamond pendant and a card that read, "To dear Ella, a woman with a quiet manner, a generous heart, and the patience of a saint. Thank you for accepting me as I am. Thank you for being my wife. Yours, David." Ella had never confessed this to David, but reading this card had felt like reading an obituary. This is what they will write about me when I die, she had thought, and if they were sincere, they might also add this. building her whole life around her husband and children. Ella lacked any survival technique to help her cope with life's hardships on her own. She was not the type to throw caution to the wind. Even changing her daily coffee brand was a major effort, all of which is why no one, including Ella, could explain what was going on when she filed for divorce in the fall of 2008 after 20 years of marriage. But there was a reason: love. They did not live in the same city, not even in the same continent. The two of them were not only miles apart but also as different as day and night. Their lifestyles were so dissimilar that it seemed impossible for them to bear each other's presence, never mind fall in love. But it happened. It happened fast. So fast, in fact, that Ella had no time to realize what was happening and to be on guard, if one could ever be on guard against love. Love came to Ella as suddenly and brusquely as if a stone had been hurled from out of nowhere. Ella, Northampton, May 17, 2008. Birds were singing outside her kitchen window on that balmy day in spring. Afterwards, Ella replayed the scene in her mind so many times that, rather than a fragment from the past, it felt like an ongoing moment still happening somewhere out there in the universe. There they were, sitting around the table, having a late family lunch on a Sunday afternoon. Her husband was filling his plate with fried chicken legs, his favorite food. Avi was playing his knife and fork like drumsticks while his twin Orly was trying to calculate how many bites of which food she could eat so as not to ruin her diet of 650 calories a day. Janet, who was a freshman at Mount Holyoke College nearby, seemed lost in her thoughts as she spread cream cheese on another slice of bread. Also at the table sat Aunt Esther, who had stopped by to drop off one of her famous marble cakes and then stayed on for lunch. Ella had a lot of work to do afterwards, but she was not ready to leave the table just yet. Lately, they didn't have too many shared family meals, and she saw this as a golden chance for everyone to reconnect. Esther, did Ella give you the good news? David asked suddenly. She found a great job. Though Ella had graduated with a degree in English literature and loved fiction, she hadn't done much in the field after college, other than editing small pieces of women's magazines, attending a few book clubs, and occasionally writing book reviews for some local papers. That was all. There was a time when she had aspired to become a prominent book critic, but then the simple accepted fact that life had carried her elsewhere, turning her into an industrious housewife with three kids and endless domestic responsibilities. Not that she complained, being the mother, the wife, the dog walker, and the housekeeper kept her busy enough. She didn't have to be a breadwinner on top of all these. Though none of her feminist friends from Smith College approved of her choice, she was satisfied to be a stay-at-home mom and grateful that her husband could afford it. Besides, she had never abandoned her passion for books and still considered herself a voracious reader. A few years ago, things had begun to change. The children were growing up, and they made it clear that they didn't need her as much as they once had. Realizing that she had too much to spare and no one to spend it with, Ella had considered how it might be to find a job. David had encouraged her, but though they kept talking and talking about it, she rarely pursued the opportunities that came her way. And when she did, potential employers were always looking for someone younger or more experienced. Afraid of being rejected over and over, she had simply let the subject drop. Nevertheless, in May 2008, whatever obstacle had impeded her from finding a job all these years unexpectedly vanished. 2 weeks shy of her 40th birthday, she found herself working for a literary agency based in Boston. It was her husband who found her the job, though one of his clients, or perhaps through one of his mistresses. Oh, it's no big deal, Ella rushed to explain now. I am only a part time reader for a literary agent. But David seemed determined not to let her think too little of her new job. Come on, tell them it's a well known agency, he urged, nudging her. And when she refused to comply, he heartedly agreed with himself. It's a prestigious place, Esther. You should see the other assistants. Girls and boys fresh out of the best colleges. Ella is the only one going back to work after being a housewife for years. Now, don't be modest. Ella wondered if deep inside her husband felt guilty about keeping her away from a career or else about cheating on her, these being the only two explanations she could think of as to why he was now going overboard in his enthusiasm. Still smiling, David concluded, "This is what I called chutzpah. We are all proud of her. She is a prize, always was," had said Aunt Esther in a voice so sentimental that it sounded as if Ella had left the table and was gone for good. They all gazed at her lovingly. Even Avie didn't make a cynical remark, and Orly for once seemed to care about something other than her looks. Ella forced herself to appreciate the moment of kindness, but she felt an overwhelming exhaustion that she had never experienced before. She secretly prayed for someone to change the subject. Janet, her older daughter, must have heard the prayer, for they suddenly claimed in, "I have some good news too." All heads turned towards her, faces beaming with expectations. "Scott and I have decided to get married," Janet announced. "Oh, I know what you guys are going to say, that we haven't finished college yet and all that, but you have got to understand, we both feel ready for the next big move." An awkward silence descended upon the kitchen table as the warmth that had canopied them just a moment ago evaporated. Orly and Avie exchanged blank looks, and Aunt Esther froze with her hand tightened around a glass of apple juice. David put his fork aside as if he had no appetite left and squinted at Janet with his light brown eyes that were deeply creased with smile lines at the corner. However, right now he was anything but smiling. His mouth had drawn into a pout as though he had just downed a swig of vinegar. "Great! I expected you to share my happiness, but I get this cool treatment instead," Janet whined. "You just said you were getting married," remarked David, as if Janet didn't know what she had said and needed to be informed. "Dad, I know it seems a bit too soon, but Scott proposed to me the other day and I've already said yes." "But why?" asked Ella. From the way Janet looked at her, Ella reckoned that was not a kind of good question her daughter had expected. She would rather have been asked when or how. In either cases, it meant that she could start shopping for her wedding dress. The question why was another matter altogether and had completely caught her off guard. "Because I love him, I guess." Janet's tone was slightly condescending. "Honey, what I meant was, why the rush?" insisted Ella. "Are you pregnant or something?" Aunt Esther twitched in her chair, her face stern, her anguish visible. She took an antacid tablet from her pocket and started chewing on it. "I am going to be an uncle," Avie said, giggling. Ella had held Janet's hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "You can always tell us the truth. You know that, right? We'll stand by you no matter what." "Mom, will you please stop that?" Janet snapped as she pulled her hand away. "This is nothing to do with pregnancy. You are embarrassing me." "I was just trying to help," Ella responded calmly, calmness being a state she had been lately finding harder and harder to achieve. "By insulting me, you mean apparently the only way you can see Scott and me by getting married is me being knocked up. Does it ever occur to you that I might, just might, want to marry this guy because I love him? We have been dating for 8 months now." This elicited a scoff from Ella. "Oh, yeah, as if you could tell a man's character in 8 months. Your father and I have been married for almost 20 years, and even we can't claim to know each other, everything about each other. 8 months, is nothing in a relationship. It took God only 6 days to create the entire universe," said Avie, beaming, but cold stares from everyone at the table forced him into silence. Sensing the escalating tension, David, his eyes fixed on his elder daughter, his brow furrowed in thought, interjected, "Honey, what your mom is trying to say is that dating is one thing, marrying is quite another." "But Dad, did you think we would date forever?" Janet asked. Drawing in a deep breath, Ella said, "To be perfectly blunt, we were expecting you to grow out of it. You are too young to get involved in any serious relationship." "You know what I'm thinking, Mom?" Janet said in a voice so flat as to be unrecognizable. "I'm thinking you're projecting your own fears onto me. But just because you married so young and had a baby when you were my age, that doesn't mean I'm going to make same mistake." Ella blushed crimson as if I slapped in the face. From deep within, she remembered the difficult pregnancy that had resulted in Janet's premature birth as a baby and then as a toddler.